Have you ever gazed upon those stunning photos of Dutch tulip fields and thought, why don't my tulips ever look like that? You plant dozens of bulbs only to be met with sparse, crooked, or even non-existent blooms come springtime. What if I told you that the Dutch, the undisputed masters of tulips, approach this task entirely differently? Their secret isn't some magical soil. It's a precise, rigorous method where even one tiny misstep can jeopardize the entire harvest. Today, we're going to break down this method, step by meticulous step, and you'll soon understand why there's simply no room for error. So why go the Dutch way at all? It's simple. For them, tulips are far more than just a pretty garden ornament. They're a massive global industry. They simply cannot afford for bulbs to fail, or for the wrong varieties to emerge. Their method has been refined to perfection, ensuring a 100% successful outcome. And today, we're going to master it together. So, let's start with a crucial element that many gardeners often overlook, the timing of planting. We tend to think, plant in the fall. But fall is a pretty broad term, isn't it? Are we talking September, October, November? For Dutch professionals, that kind of guesswork is a game of roulette they simply won't play. Their rule is more like a precise scientific formula. Plant tulips when the soil temperature, at a depth of 10 to 15 centimetres, consistently holds steady between 9 and 10 degrees Celsius. No sooner, no later. Why such a rigid rule? If you plant them in soil that's too warm, the bulb gets confused. It will mistakenly believe spring has arrived and begin actively growing, sending up green shoots. But then the first frost hit, and all that precious energy is wasted. Wait too long and plant in already cold ground, and you face a different issue. The bulb won't have sufficient time to develop a strong root system, and a robust root system is the absolute foundation for a healthy, vibrant flower. Without those powerful roots, the tulip won't be able to gather the strength it needs to bloom beautifully in the spring. So, how do you pinpoint this ideal moment? Your best friend here is a simple soil thermometer. Just insert it into the ground and keep an eye on the temperature. Once it consistently falls within that ideal range, that's your cue. This is the first and most crucial step, and one you absolutely cannot afford to get wrong. Now that we've got the timing right, let's turn our attention to the star of the show, the bulb itself. This is where many people make their second critical mistake. They simply grab an attractive package, relying solely on the appealing picture on the front. The Dutch, however, would never do that. To them, every single bulb is an individual, subject to rigorous selection. So, forget buying blind. Pick up the bulb. What should you be feeling for? It needs to be firm and resilient, much like a good young potato. It should also feel surprisingly heavy for its size. This is a clear sign it's packed with nutrients and has all the energy it needs for an abundant, vibrant bloom. Next, give it a thorough look from all angles. The outer layers or scales should be dry, smooth, and completely free of any dark spots or fuzzy mould. Pay particular attention to the basal plate. That's where the roots emerge. There shouldn't be the slightest hint of rot there. Any softness, any suspicious discoloration means it's a dud. Not only will such a bulb yield a poor bloom, but it could also spread fungal diseases and contaminate its healthy companions. It's like putting a sick player on the team. They'll undermine the whole effort. Therefore, treat this selection process like a casting call. You're not just picking planting material, you're choosing the future showstoppers of your spring garden. And for this role, only the most robust and healthy contenders are fit for the part. We've selected healthy and robust bulbs, but a true Dutch professional wouldn't stop there. They'd pay close attention to size. And it's not merely a case of the bigger, the better. This is where the concept of grading comes in. Simply put, it's the process of sorting bulbs by their size. Why is this crucial? Imagine this. A bulb's size is a direct indicator of its stored energy. The larger it is, the more vigour it possesses. This directly influences the size of the future bloom, the thickness of its stem, and even the number of offsets it will produce. For Dutch growers, especially those cultivating flowers for cut arrangements or exhibitions, inconsistency simply isn't an option. Think back to those perfect fields. The flowers stand like soldiers on parade, perfectly uniform, each one an identical height. This stunning effect is achieved precisely because all the planted bulbs were of the same grade. If you intersperse large and small bulbs, your flower bed will look haphazard. Some tulips will be tall and vigorous, others small and underwhelming, and they'll likely bloom at varying times. So if your aim is to create that ideal, dense carpet of blooms, always select bulbs of the same, ideally larger size. It's the secret to harmony and predictably stunning results. Today we're going to debunk a very popular myth that's been circulating on many gardening forums. It's the myth about pre-chilling tulip bulbs. Some gardeners suggest placing your tulip bulbs in the fridge for a couple of weeks before autumn planting, supposedly to stimulate them. But here's the truth. For outdoor fall planting, not only is this completely unnecessary, it can actually do more harm than good. Let's understand the logic behind it. Why do tulips need a cold period? This cold period, or dormancy, is crucial for the bulb to trigger the biochemical processes that will lead to blooming in spring. However, when you plant bulbs in the fall, nature takes care of all of this for you. A bulb planted directly in the ground experiences a natural cooling cycle all winter long. It gradually chills down with the soil, remains dormant, and then, with the first warmth of spring, it awakens. Artificial chilling in the refrigerator is only necessary for one specific purpose: forcing bulbs to bloom out of season. For example, if you want tulips to flower for New Year's or International Women's Day in a pot. But for regular outdoor fall planting, completely forget about the fridge. Trust nature. It knows exactly what it's doing, far better than any artificial method. Your only job is simply to plant the bulb in its natural environment at the right time. So, we've got our bulbs sorted. Now let's find them the perfect home. As the Dutch say, even the finest bulb won't truly flourish if planted in the wrong spot. Two crucial elements come into play here: sun and wind. Tulips are true heliophiles, or, put simply, sun lovers. For large, vibrant blooms and rich colours, they need plenty of light. So, choose the sunniest spot in your garden. A location that receives at least 6 hours of direct sunlight a day will be ideal. If you plant tulips in the shade, for example, under dense trees, they might sprout, of course, but their stems will be thin and leggy, and the flowers small and pale. They'll stretch towards the light, expending all their energy just to reach for the sun. Secondly, protection from wind is essential. Powerful spring winds can wreak havoc on tall, delicate tulip stems, especially for varieties with large, heavy blooms. The wind can simply snap them. Therefore, the ideal spot is a sunny area, but sheltered from the north or prevailing windy side by a house wall, a fence, or a hedge. Remember, these ideal conditions aren't a luxury. They're essential for truly magnificent blooms. Once your spot is chosen, it's time to prepare the soil. This is where the Dutch approach truly shines. They don't just dig a hole and toss in a bulb. Instead, they create an ideal, almost laboratory-precise environment for them. The biggest enemy we need to defeat is waterlogging. Tulips absolutely cannot tolerate wet feet. If their roots are constantly saturated, the bulb will quickly rot. And come spring, you'll simply find no shoots. That's why soil structure is paramount. The ideal choice is light, loose, well-draining soil, such as sandy loam. But what if your garden has heavy clay soil that turns into a bog after rain? Don't despair. It absolutely can, and should, be improved. The Dutch tackle this by digging over the plot a full spade's depth and incorporating soil amendments. The easiest and most effective is coarse river sand. Peat, or thoroughly decomposed compost, also work wonderfully. These additions will make the soil lighter, more airy, and prevent water from pooling around the roots. This isn't merely advice. It's a critically important procedure for your tulips' well-being. Think of it as laying a solid foundation for them, one that will protect them from their biggest menace, Now here's a small but incredibly effective secret that Dutch tulip growers use to give their bulbs 100% protection against rot. This technique is often called a sand cushion or a sand jacket, and replicating it in your own garden couldn't be simpler. So what's the trick? Once you've dug your planting hole to the desired depth, resist the urge to immediately place the bulb. Instead, first pour a layer of coarse river sand, about 2 to 3 centimeters thick, onto the bottom of the hole. It's on this sandy bed that you'll then place the base of your tulip bulb. What does this achieve? The sand performs several vital functions. Firstly, it provides perfect drainage. Any excess moisture that might accumulate in the soil after autumn rains or spring snowmelt won't come into direct contact with the bulb's base. It simply drains away through the sand into the deeper soil layers. Secondly, sand creates an unfavourable environment for the development of fungal and bacterial infections around the bulb. Pathogens find it far more challenging to multiply in dry sand than in damp earth. Some gardeners take it a step further. After placing the bulb on its sandy cushion, they lightly sprinkle a bit more sand on top, essentially giving it a sand jacket, before finally covering it with soil. This simple method is your absolute best insurance against waterlogging and decay. We've prepared the soil and created our sand cushion. Now, one of the most critical steps is planting depth. The Dutch don't rely on guesswork or intuition here. Instead, they follow a clear, time-tested rule known as the rule of 3 heights. It's incredibly easy to remember, and its benefits are immense. The core of the rule is straightforward. Your planting hole should be 3 times as deep as the bulb's height. Let's walk through an example. You take a bulb and measure it with a ruler from its base to its tip. Say it's 5 centimeters. Simply multiply that number by 3 and you get 15 centimeters. This is your perfect planting depth. Why is this so crucial? If a bulb is planted too shallowly, it can freeze solid during a harsh winter. Moreover, shallow planting can lead to the bulb producing offsets or small daughter bulbs right at the surface, which significantly weakens the parent plant. Conversely, if you bury it too deep, the emerging sprout will struggle immensely to reach the sunlight in spring. It will expend too much energy doing so, resulting in either weak flowering or no blooms at all. The rule of 3 heights strikes the ideal balance. It provides the bulb with vital protection from frost and ensures an effortless start in spring. This isn't just a gardening tip, it's a proven horticultural principle refined over centuries that virtually guarantees success. We've already covered the ideal planting depth. Now, let's discuss how closely to space your tulips. Here, the approach might vary slightly, depending on your ultimate goal. Let's take a look at how this is typically done on commercial farms in Holland, and then see how we can adapt those techniques for our own gardens. On those vast flower fields whose stunning images we all admire, tulip bulbs are planted incredibly close together. The spacing between them can be just a few centimetres, or sometimes even nearly touching. Why such tight spacing? The goal is to achieve a dense, seamless carpet of blooms, where the soil is completely hidden. This is what creates that breathtaking wow factor. However, this method does have its drawbacks. The bulbs are in an extremely competitive environment, constantly vying for light, water, and nutrients. That's why commercial growers use powerful fertilizers, and after blooming, these bulbs are typically discarded or not kept for future planting. For a home garden, however, such an extreme planting method isn't always practical or desirable. After all, we want our tulips to return and bring us joy for more than just one season. Therefore, for average-sized tulip bulbs, an optimal spacing of 10 to 15 centimetres, which is approximately 4 to 6 inches, is recommended. This provides ample room for each plant to develop a healthy root system and robust foliage. Yet your planting will still appear dense enough to create a beautiful, cohesive display. If you're planting smaller bulbs like those of botanical tulips, you can reduce the spacing to 5 to 7 centimetres, about 2 to 3 inches. You might think planting a tulip bulb is as simple as digging a hole, dropping it in, and covering it up. Yet even with this seemingly basic task, there's a crucial detail that distinguishes a casual approach from a truly professional one: the correct orientation of the bulb in the planting hole. Every tulip bulb has a distinct top and bottom. The bottom is the basal plate, a flat or slightly concave area where you can often see the tiny nubs of future roots starting to form. The top, conversely, is the pointed tip or apical bud, from which your tulip sprout will emerge in spring. The golden rule for planting is simple: always place the bulb with the basal plate facing down and the pointed tip pointing strictly upwards. What happens if you make a mistake and plant a bulb on its side, or even worse, completely upside down? Tulips are remarkably resilient plants. Chances are it won't die. The sprout exhibits what's called negative geotropism, meaning it instinctively strives to grow upwards, defying gravity. It will bend and twist underground, navigating around the bulb itself, and eventually find its way to the surface and the sun. However, this subterranean, acrobatic feat will cost the plant a tremendous amount of precious energy. As a result, that sprout will be weaker, thinner, and any bloom, if it even appears, will be delayed and less impressive. Ensuring the correct orientation of your bulb is a straightforward way to give your tulip an easy, vigorous start. Don't make it perform heroic feats underground before it even has a chance to see the light of day. Once the bulb is in its place, it's crucial to provide it with an initial boost of nutrients for spring. And here, just like with planting depth, Dutch growers follow strict guidelines instead of simply sprinkling fertilizer by eye. This initial feeding at planting time is key to strong flower stems and vibrant blooms. The most important rule to remember: in autumn, tulips absolutely must not receive fresh manure or fertilizers high in nitrogen. Nitrogen encourages lush green growth, leaves and stems. In autumn, this is precisely what we want to avoid. Premature green growth under the snow is a sure path to weakening and potentially killing the bulb. So, what do they need? In autumn, bulbs require phosphorus and potassium to establish strong roots and form their flower buds for the following spring. Phosphorus is vital for developing a robust root system, while potassium boosts the plant's winter hardiness and helps it resist diseases. Therefore, the ideal choice is a specialized autumn bulb fertilizer, specifically formulated with a higher ratio of phosphorus and potassium to nitrogen. These are typically incorporated directly into the planting hole, thoroughly mixed with the soil, ensuring the granules don't come into direct contact with the base of the bulb. Think of it like giving an athlete the perfect energy bar before a marathon, rather than a heavy meal. All the bulbs are neatly planted, fertilized, and their holes filled. You might think the work is done, but there's one crucial, often overlooked step, especially if autumn has been rainy: watering. Right after planting, it's absolutely essential to thoroughly water your tulip bed. You might ask, why water now if it's going to rain soon anyway? It's not just about providing moisture. Watering after planting serves a crucial mechanical function. It helps the soil settle and compact snugly around each bulb, eliminating any air pockets. If air pockets remain around the bulb, its roots will effectively be growing into empty space, which will significantly slow down the rooting process. That firm contact with moist soil acts as a vital signal to the bulb. Time to put down roots. It's precisely after this initial watering that active root system growth truly begins. The bulb needs to establish a robust root system before the ground freezes solid and the true winter frosts arrive. Well-developed roots from the fall are your guarantee that come spring, as soon as the snow melts, your tulips will spring into action with immediate access to essential moisture and nutrients. So don't be tempted to skip this step. Grab that watering can. This final touch in your autumn planting is the ultimate guarantee of a stunning spring display. So let's talk about the consequences. What happens if you skip that crucial step and don't water your tulips after planting? At first glance, this might seem like a minor detail. After all, autumn soil can often feel damp, but in reality, it's one of the most common and disheartening mistakes, often leading to complete disappointment come spring. Picture this: you've planted a bulb in loose, dry soil. This creates air pockets and gaps around it, Without watering, the soil won't settle properly, and the bulb's base won't make firm contact with the earth. Consequently, it won't receive the vital signal to start rooting. Its roots either won't grow at all, or they'll develop very slowly and weakly. Then the frosts arrive. An unrooted bulb essentially just lies in dry, frozen soil, much like an item in a freezer. It can't absorb water or nutrients. Instead, it slowly loses its own moisture. Over a long winter, such a bulb can simply dry out, turning into a shriveled husk. Come spring, you'll wait for sprouts, but they won't appear. And when you dig, you'll find nothing but a shriveled, empty, lifeless shell. This is precisely why Dutch growers never skip this crucial step. They know that autumn watering isn't just about hydration. It's the essential act of kick-starting the bulb's life. We've taken nearly every precaution to ensure our tulips overwinter successfully, but there's one threat that can destroy all our hard work, literally overnight. Rodents, field mice, voles and other small pests absolutely love juicy tulip bulbs. To them, your freshly planted flower bed is a gourmet restaurant, a veritable feast carefully prepared for winter. On large commercial Dutch farms, they tackle this issue comprehensively, employing various methods of deterrence and protection. What about us, with our home gardens? The most reliable and humane method is to use specialised planting baskets designed for bulbs. These are typically made from plastic or mesh and act like a protective shield. You simply dig a hole the size of the basket, place it in, add a layer of soil at the bottom, and then plant your bulbs directly inside. Finally, cover them with more soil. Mice and voles simply won't be able to physically reach your precious bulbs. If you don't have these baskets on hand, you can turn to some time-tested folk remedies. For instance, some gardeners will surround their bulbs with thorny rose-hip branches when planting, or interplant with species whose scent rodents dislike, like the striking imperial fritillary. Neglecting rodent protection means risking your entire collection. Believe me, there's nothing more disheartening than to discover in spring, where your beautiful display of bloom should be, only mouse holes and the sad remnants of their feast. Now let's talk about a brilliant Dutch gardening technique, perfect for those with limited space but a desire for maximum beauty. This method is aptly named lasagna planting, or simply layered planting. While most often used for growing tulips in containers and large pots, it can also be adapted for small garden beds. The concept truly mirrors the preparation of its namesake, the famous Italian dish. Bulbs of various varieties are planted in layers, one above the other. How does it work? At the bottom of a deep pot, you'll first add a good drainage layer, followed by a layer of soil. On this, you'll place the first, deepest layer, bulbs of the latest blooming and tallest tulip varieties. Cover them with more soil. Next, directly above these, add the second layer, bulbs of mid-season blooming varieties. Cover these with another layer of soil. And finally, on the very top layer of your lasagna, plant the bulbs of the earliest and most compact tulip varieties. Fill the remainder of the pot to the top with soil. What's the magical result? In spring, as soon as the snow melts, the tulips from the top layer will be the first to burst into bloom. As they fade, the flowers from the middle layer will gracefully take over. And finally, the latest blooming varieties from the bottom tier will conclude this stunning floral marathon. The incredible result: a single pot or a small garden bed will provide continuous blooms for several glorious weeks. It's a fantastic way to maximise space and create an incredibly dynamic, ever-changing floral display. The planting is done and your bulbs are safely in the ground. Now there's just one crucial step left before letting them settle in for winter: mulching. Mulch is a protective layer of organic material that shields the soil. But here's a crucial piece of advice: don't rush it. The biggest mistake you can make is to mulch immediately after planting, while the soil is still warm. Why is this a problem? Firstly, under that warm blanket of mulch, the soil will take longer to cool down. This can actually encourage tulips to sprout prematurely. Secondly, and this is perhaps the greatest danger, a loose layer of mulch on warm ground creates an ideal winter home for mice. You'll essentially be building them a cosy shelter right above your bulb buffet. The correct time to mulch is when the top layer of soil has already experienced its first consistent frosts, meaning it's frozen a few centimetres deep. That's when it's safe to cover your planting beds. What materials can you use for mulching? Excellent options include dry peat, well-rotted compost, fallen leaves, make sure they're from healthy trees, shredded bark, or evergreen boughs. A 5 to 7 centimetre layer of mulch will help buffer against drastic temperature swings throughout winter, protect your bulbs during harsh, snowless freezes, and help retain soil moisture come spring. It's the crucial final act of care, and getting the timing right is key. Imagine this scenario. You enthusiastically planted some new, rare tulip varieties in different corners of your garden last autumn. Winter passes, spring arrives. You step into your garden full of anticipation, only to realise you can't remember where exactly you put them. Sound familiar? To avoid this common predicament, Dutch professionals always use labelling. On vast commercial fields, this involves intricate systems with codes, row numbers, and precise diagrams. For us home gardeners, that level of detail isn't necessary, but the core idea of labelling is incredibly useful. The simplest method is to place small stakes or dedicated garden markers next to each group of bulbs right after planting. You can write the variety name and even the planting year on them. Why is this important? Firstly, come spring, you'll know exactly where to expect those shoots. This prevents accidental damage to young sprouts during your initial spring garden tasks. Secondly, it helps prevent mixing up your varieties, especially if, like many gardeners, you dig up your bulbs for drying in the summer. With clear labels, you'll know precisely which variety is which, allowing you to plan future plantings with ease. Thirdly, it's incredibly convenient for maintaining a garden journal and for analysis. You'll be able to track which varieties thrived and which proved to be more temperamental. This simple, cost-free step adds an element of organisation and professionalism to your gardening, and come spring, you'll definitely thank yourself for doing it. Many people think tulips are exclusively outdoor garden plants, but what if you don't have a garden and only a balcony or terrace? Must you really give up on this stunning spring beauty? Absolutely not. The Dutch planting method is perfectly adaptable for growing tulips in pots and containers. The core principles remain the same, but there are a few key points you need to pay close attention to. First and foremost is drainage. In the confined space of a pot, waterlogging is even more detrimental than it is in open ground. Therefore, you absolutely must add a generous layer of drainage material, such as expanded clay aggregate, gravel, or broken pot shards, to the bottom of your container, at least 5 to 7 centimetres thick. And of course, the pot must have drainage holes. The second crucial aspect is the soil. It should be very loose and nutrient-rich. You can use a ready-made potting mix for flowering plants, blending it with sand and a small amount of all-purpose fertiliser. The rules for planting depth and spacing between bulbs also apply here. And for maximum visual impact, you can even use the lasagna method we've explored before. After planting, water the pot thoroughly and leave it outdoors for winter, on your balcony or in the garden. The main thing is not to let the soil completely dry out during winter. A little attention, and this spring your balcony will transform into a miniature Kuchenhof. Let's talk once more about the tulip's archenemy. It's not frost, nor pests, it's excessive moisture. Waterlogging is the #1 killer of tulip bulbs. While other mistakes might lead to weak blooms or smaller flowers, this one is fatal. It simply wipes out your entire planting. This problem becomes particularly acute if you have heavy clay soil in your garden, especially after a long, rainy autumn. Clay soil drains poorly. As a result, your planting hole can turn into a miniature underground pool where the bulb will literally sit in water. In such conditions, rot and fungal diseases develop rapidly. Even the healthiest and strongest bulb won't withstand such an ordeal. This is precisely why the Dutch, whose country is known for its damp climate, pay such immense attention to soil preparation and drainage. All those steps we've discussed, adding sand to heavy soil, creating a sand bed at the bottom of the planting hole, these aren't just recommendations for better results. They are vital safety measures. They are your insurance against the most common and most destructive mistake. Remember, a tulip will tolerate drought much better than a flood. Ensure it has dry feet, and it will reward you with an abundance of magnificent blooms. So what's the main Dutch secret that turns an ordinary flower bed into a work of art? It's not about one single action. The secret lies in the system. They approach tulip planting not as simple gardening, but as precision engineering. Every single step, from calibrating the bulb size to the exact planting depth, is a variable in an equation designed to produce the perfect bloom. A mistake in just one place can unravel the entire design. That's why their fields look picture perfect, while ours often turn out to be a bit hit or miss. It's not magic, it's meticulous calculation and discipline. And now, this precise approach is available to you too. So we've covered everything, from choosing the right time and the perfect bulb, to pest protection, and even the sand cushion secret. The main takeaway is that there are no small details in this process. Precision and meticulous attention to detail are what truly set a professional apart. Thank you for watching until the end. If you found this video helpful and are ready to try planting tulips the Dutch way, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more gardening secrets. Did you have a secret tip for planting tulips, or perhaps a funny mistake you're not ashamed to share? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to read them.